Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sonia Space. I'm really excited about today's episode because we're talking about something that so many people struggle with, which is knowing when it's time to make a career move and how to make those decisions with confidence. Whether you're feeling stuck in your current role, considering a career pivot, or just trying to figure out what's next, this conversation is going to be incredibly helpful. Today, I'm joined by a special guest who has great insight on navigating career decisions and finding alignment in your work. Thank you so much for being here today, Taylor. How are you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am doing well and excited to get into this conversation. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. So happy to be
Yeah,
here.
and I'm super excited to hear what you have to say. To start us off, can you give our listeners a brief introduction of yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Taylor M. LaSane. I'm the founder and CEO of Shine, which is a career studio that helps leaders make bold, strategic career decisions. And I started the company back in 2022 while working at Google, where I was coaching internally there as well with folks in their careers, trying to help them get clear. And I realized this trend where there's so many high achieving people who do so well, but they're like chasing after what they should be doing in their careers and they feel burned out and stuck and sad. And I was like, wait, I think I'm gifted in helping people not feel that way and get more clear. And so
Yeah.
I started doing that work at Google and then transitioned to founding the company and doing it outside of Google. And after almost 10 years, I decided to take the leap and exit Google and do this full time a few months ago. So excited to be here and to do this. I typically work with folks as a coach, doing workshops, and then hosting this really fun signature event called Dream Day, where we get women together to get strategic and to reimagine what their careers could look like if they weren't in that shit space. So my specialty
Yeah.
is like going from stuck to strategic, and I love
Uh,
doing this. So thank you for having me over to talk about it.
Yeah, and I can tell you're very passionate about it too. And we need something like that because career misalignment and you mentioned burnout, that's real. And it happens. And success versus burnout and misalignment, it's all there and we need to figure out what we need. So let's start with something many people are wondering about. What are the biggest signs it may be time to make a career move?
Ooh, I love this question because we actually have a framework that we use to help people identify it, and we work through it in our workshops. So it's called the STUCK framework, and it starts with settling. Are you settling or just feeling like, this is fine, but not great? Are you torn? Do you feel this pull between two things? Are you underutilized? So you're in a job and you're working and you're doing a good job, but you don't feel like you're using all your skills or abilities in the work. Are you feeling chaotic or confused? That's usually another sign. If there's not clear milestones in your job or clear remit of what your work is supposed to entail, that's usually a sign. And then the last one is K, which is just this knowing that there's more. You have this sense that this is fine, but it could be better. And that stuck framework is what we usually use to diagnose that. Is there time? It's time for a pivot, time for a change. If you're feeling any one or combination of those, then that's usually a good signal that time to figure something else out.
That's a really cool framework. And I'm sure your gut is also a huge part of it too, right? Something's just not feeling right. I want to get into burnout versus misalignment. I think something a lot of people struggle with is knowing whether they're just burnt out or if they're truly in the wrong role. So, how can someone tell the difference between feeling burnt out and genuine career misalignment?
Ooh, this is a good one. So I think that the clearest distinction between burnout and misalignment or that stuck feeling is that burnout is cured by rest usually. If you take a vacation or spend some time off, you feel better.
Yeah.
Misalignment, you don't, no matter how many breaks you have, it's only cured by clarity and getting realigned to something that is better and more in terms of what you want to be doing. And so I actually experienced this because you can be successful and be misaligned and think it's burnout, but it's not. And when I got it was my third promotion at Google, and I didn't feel excited. I felt like this is not what I think I'm supposed to feel in this space.
Yeah.
And it was because not because I was burnt out, but because I was misaligned. I was chasing this and looking successful, but not actually going where I wanted to go in the success. And that was the clearest indicator for me that, oh, you're misaligned. I wasn't burnt out. I just was chasing something that wasn't my own. It was someone else's.
Yeah. I'm like reflecting onto myself because worked in a corporate space, but then this is like a creative outlet for me. And I feel like I'm passionate about this because this is mine. It's something that I own versus doing something that I'm good at. I feel like I'm not really using all of my skill sets and things that I'm good at. And I think that's a great way
Exactly.
to also kind of tell if you're misaligned and if this is truly what you want. And there's nothing wrong with being in the corporate space and being good at what you do. But I feel like a lot of times we get stuck into that realm. And sometimes we don't explore our creative side and where we can own a business or really run that business and see how we would execute and work through that. So before someone makes a big decision, reflection is really important. What questions should people ask themselves before making that career pivot?
Yeah, I love what you said about like not giving yourself room to explore if you're in a corporate space because a lot of times, especially as folks from historically underrepresented backgrounds, you are taught that you need to listen, that creativity, that artistic side or whatever that is, that outlet you have, keep it in a box because that's not what's going to
Yeah.
make you money. And often we are kind of groomed to move through our careers focusing on paycheck because we have to. It's a survival mechanism, and our families, things like that, kind of need us to know how to do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I come from that kind of background as well. But I do think that is the mental pattern that stops a lot of people, especially women, from giving themselves the room or the space to say, I'm interested in this, or I'm curious about this. And so we don't always give ourselves that permission, but I try to create the space for people to test and dabble and see. That being said, I think your actual question was about knowing the questions that you should ask yourself in this space. And we have a clarity compass that we use with our clients, and it's super simple. So the first question is, what do you value in this season? What are your non negotiables that you are valuing and prioritizing? The second is, what do you love about what you do right now? Because even if you don't like something, there's probably some good things or elements that you enjoy about your current position. And then the third question is just what are your no goes, the things you absolutely do not want in your next. So, your values, what do you like? What don't you like? And when you have that clear picture, you can make sure you're running to something and not running from something because there's a difference.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think, especially when we're talking about like alignment, it does come down to your values and what you crave and what you want and what you're really aligned with. So that's a really good way to put it. Going back to what we were talking about previously, I just want to say that when you're working in a corporate role or role where it's providing you money, you can utilize those resources and do something that you're also passionate about, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You can use that as a way to build something for yourself while, obviously, especially if you have like a family and you need the financial stability and security. So I
Yes.
think it's okay to do that. It's okay to be in a space like that until you figure something out for yourself. So
I
you've
agree.
clearly made thoughtful career decisions along the way. What mindset shifts helped you make confident career decisions?
Oof. The biggest one, there's been a lot, but the biggest mindset shift that's helped me make more confident career decisions is moving from asking what should I do to what do I want? Because that question of should is usually based in external pressure of what do other people expect of me? What's the next logical thing that I should do? And it's not it breeds misalignment because it's focused on other people rather than internally with you. And I'm a certified career and leadership coach. So we work internally to help you get clear on what do you actually want and drown out the noise of everybody else. And so when I started doing that for myself, I was able to move a lot more purposefully and to stop being like a people pleaser who was pressured into chasing certain things just because it would make other people happy.
That was actually my next question because just talking about the societal expectations, right? I come from a Pakistani family. It really does come down to how much money you're making and your title, and then the comparisons that you have with your friends. And that really does have an impact to some of the decisions that you make, but those decisions aren't necessarily good for you and it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily fulfill you because everybody has different needs and different passions. So, how do you quiet that noise outside and focus on what's actually right for you?
It's hard, but you have to put on blinders. I think of like
Yeah.
a racehorse. When they're running their race, they have these things to stop them from looking left and right. And for us, left is social media, right is our friends or family members' careers and their expectations. But again, when you make that career clarity compass that I talked about and you answer those three questions, if it's not out, like it's not in that and it's outside of it, you have to put on blinders. I like to think too of like bowling. A lot of people think, well, the ball will go where my arm is or where my foot is pointed, but like where you're looking is what matters the most when you bowl. And so what you're focused on in your career is where you're going to go. And I like to tell people that. you have to just block out the noise because there'll always be other people's opinions, but at the end of the day, they don't control what you do in your career, only you can. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that in itself, it's easier said than done
for sure.
because a lot of times it's a lot about self-reflection, self-growth, and that in itself is a process just trying to figure out who you are and where you belong, and especially when you have people-pleasing tendencies growing up, which I feel like a lot of people do, right? You don't completely eradicate that. I think it's still there in a way, but you just have to figure out how to navigate through that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it just I get, like, really figuring out your negotiables and non-negotiables because at the end, I think what helps me is I have one life, right? I wanna do things my way, and if I have the opportunity to do that, why not make it happen? Because when I'm older, I'm probably gonna regret it, right? So it's best to explore, take on new opportunities, try something, even if you fail, try something else, right? So
Yes.
I think that's a great way to kind of look at it is just wanting to explore and realizing that you only have one life and people are going to talk about you regardless. People are going to do that regardless. But people who are that have a tunnel vision, they don't look at what other people are doing either. So that
Exactly. I love
exactly.
that so much because, like, athletes, when they're training for something, they're not going to other people's practices and looking at what they're doing. They're
Yep.
in the zone, locked in with what they're doing. And I love what you said about realizing there's only one life. That's exactly how I prioritize the decision to leave Google. I said, what story do I want to tell my children about this time in my life? Do I want to tell them that their mom prioritized fear and stability and worry and doubt about what was possible? Or do I want to tell them that, hey, your mom had a clear vision for what she wanted and she went after it? Even if it doesn't turn out how I think it will, I'm going to have a great story to tell them. And the other
Mhm.
story, I don't want that one. I only get one life to build the story. I have to make it a good one. I love a good story. So, yeah, I love that you said that.
Yeah. And being a mom too, role modeling is very important because
Yeah,
you're like, what kind of image, what am I setting up for my kid or kids, right? That helps you better understand where you're at and if you're in alignment with your life because you want to set a good example for your children. So, another challenge people face is balancing passion with practicality. I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but how do you balance following your passion while still maintaining financial stability?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I
Mhm.
like to tell folks to test and to try and to see things as an experiment because if you have a passion and you can test it in the market and see if they're willing to pay for it, then that will validate whether that's something you need to pursue as a, paycheck replacement or if it's going to stay in the passion lane and not be able to transition over. But again, you have to be able to give yourself the permission to experiment and to test and to see, like, "Oh, is this something I could explore?" And a lot of folks don't even give themselves room for that because they see corporate roles as so stable and so secure that they're not even willing to try. But I mean, financial income is important. We can't act like you can just do what you love all day and not worry about bringing in income. But I think there's this aspect of betting on yourself, being willing to test and try in the market. And then I think every like entrepreneur or person who operates in their passion has a little bit of like faith mixed with delusion where you're just like, oh, I believe in
Yeah.
myself and I'm gonna test it, I'm gonna try it, and then I'm gonna, bet on me and just see what happens.
Yeah. So this is my third year podcasting. I started this as a creative outlet because working in the corporate space, I also wanted to explore my creative side. And I would say just being consistent and disciplined. And eventually I started seeing opportunities financially in the podcast space. So sometimes it's just, it really just comes down to being consistent and disciplined. Yeah, it can take some time, but maybe the next 5, 10 years, I could be making way more money than I'm making at my corporate job. It's all about just showing up for like what you want to do. And
Yeah.
if there's an audience, if there's a customer base for it, you will eventually end up making money. It's just about how much effort you're putting into it, right?
That is so true. And there's this saying that like there are people who are more consistent and not as good who are out working and out winning you, not because they're better,
Mhm.
but because they just won't stop. And a lot
They
of
have the grit.
times,
Yep.
yeah, especially with podcasting and things that take a little bit of time to take off, you will never know how good it could be if you stop doing it. We don't, especially corporate high achievers, don't typically give themselves the space to try something, be bad at it, and keep going.
Mhm.
We want to try it one time, be excellent, and then impress everybody. And like that's not how you build something sustainable. So I love that you're in year 3 and I love that you're still going.
Yeah, because I feel like in this day and age, we seek instant gratification. People talk about being aligned in their careers, but sometimes that concept does seem a little vague. So, from your perspective, what does true career alignment actually look like on a day to day basis?
Yeah. So I for me, it looks like doing what you feel aligned in doing. What
Yeah.
I think it looks like to be in that space is to actually be operating where you're using your gifts, you're using your talents, and you are serving the people who you know you're meant to serve. And again, it all comes back to a clarity compass. So once you answer those questions and you know, hey, what are my values and where do I sit and what do I want? You're able to have a clear picture of, okay, am I doing that every day? Am I aligned to that? So you're not guessing or wondering. And then there's this other piece I think is important to mention, which is you're not when you're aligned in your career, it does not mean that you don't still feel tired, you don't have hard days. And I think sometimes people paint
Mhm.
this glamorous picture of alignment and strategic careers and entrepreneurship and all that as perfect. And it's not that. It's definitely not that. But what it is you'll feel tired at the end of an aligned day, not empty. And that's the key difference that I see in people who are working in their passions and strategically aligned and people who are not.
Yeah, and that motivation and that passion is really there even when you're tired, especially when you're an
Exactly.
entrepreneur and you're doing your own thing. Yeah, it can get tiring doing certain things, but the next day you wake up, you're like, I really enjoy doing this. Like, okay, I feel rested now. Let's move on and make
Yeah.
this even better for me. So that's a really, really good way to put that. So careers evolve over time and growth usually requires being proactive. So what habits help people stay intentional and proactive about their career growth?
This is a good one too. I love all your questions are good. So
Yeah.
for this one, I have a lot of tools and tips that I give my clients, but the number one tip to being strategic and staying aligned in your career is really not being passive. You have to be proactive. And what that looks like tangibly is I recommend people have at least once a quarter a career conversation with their manager. And I don't mean tactical deliverables of what you're working on right now, things like that. I mean, big picture, what is the trajectory that I'm on? Where am I going? Is it aligned with what I want? And what are my next 3 moves, right? How do you see me moving throughout this company, within this team, or maybe outside of this team? But keeping that as a quarterly standing that you do not negotiate about having, because that's how you make sure you're still on the right track. And when you don't have that, you get caught up in the day-to-day deliverables and all the like tactical stuff, and then you can look up and you're all the way over here and you meant to be going that way.
Oh.
So I say those quarterly check-ins with your manager specifically on your career are a must-have.
Yeah, you want to get that feedback from your manager too, and if there's ways for you to develop and grow within that role, and also they can give you constructive criticism as well and see how you take that, and you never know how you can evolve and grow. So that is a great way to put it. So I know you've been giving a lot of really insightful conversation around this and advice, but if you could give one piece of career advice in a single sentence or something you would tell your younger self, what would it be?
Okay, I'll do the career advice in one sentence, and then I also want to do the younger self because I think they're both
Okay.
important.
Okay.
So the first one, the one line on one piece of career advice I would give is don't let anyone else plan your career. You have to own it. You have to plan it. And that is how you end up where you want to be aligned, strategic, and not feeling stuck. Because a lot of times we have this ladder and we're climbing it and we're doing all the things. And then we get to the top and we look and we're like, wait, it was propped up on the wrong building. I don't want to be at the top of this. Like, I should have been over there. And
Yeah.
so you have to decide and you have to select it for yourself and not let anybody else do that for you. So that's the one liner is playing your own. And then my younger self. You talked about people pleasing earlier and how like you never fully eradicate it or get rid of it, but I was bullied growing up, and so I think I have an extra edge case of like, "Ooh, how do I make myself likable and make sure people, don't whatever." And I would just tell my younger self like, "You are phenomenal, and everyone is not going to like you, and you don't have to perform or people please for anyone." And that advice spans beyond my career. I think it would have made a lot of things easier for me if I would have realized that sooner in my life.
Yeah. Don't you always realize it when you're in your 20s or 30s? Actually, a lot of people don't even realize it, to be honest. If they're not doing the work, they're still going to be stuck in that state. It's something to be grateful for that we're able to to realize and self reflect and be easy on ourselves, regardless of what life throws at us. And I think that really helps us in all areas of our lives. And for you, I feel like you're doing really great in your career and you're expanding that knowledge to other people. So thank you, Taylor, for this insightful conversation. I think our listeners will take a lot away from it. But before we go, where can people find you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Thank you for this conversation. It's been great. And yes, you can find me at SHYNE Career Studio, and that's on all platforms. We post videos on YouTube, we post content on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok. And then also, I'm Taylor M. LaSane. So you can find me at that handle as well. But this has been great. I very much appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you again for joining us today. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And feel free to share this episode with someone who might be thinking about their next career move. I would like to end this episode with a quote. Career alignment happens when what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what creates value for others all meet in the same place. Until then, see you next time. Thank you.